Hey, guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Buying my beach house was a dream come true. I had worked my whole life to be able to afford a place right on the ocean. The sound of the waves lapping on the shore was like music to my ears. I couldn't wait to sit out on the deck and watch the sunset each evening. Shortly after I moved in, I met my neighbor, Karen. Right away, I could tell she was one of those entitled types. She bragged nonstop about her fancy house and luxury cars. It was clear she looked down on me and my modest little cottage. Still, I tried to be friendly and get along. That became difficult when Karen started openly complaining about my property. She scowled at my garden, saying the flowers looked messy. She also griped about the fence around my yard, claiming it obstructed her view. I explained politely that everything was on my land and within code. Karen just sniffed and stalked off. A few weeks later, I decided to plant some palm trees in my yard. Palm trees would provide nice shade and enhance the tropical feel. I carefully chose small varieties that would grow to be around 10 feet tall. Nothing too obtrusive. The day after I planted them, Karen came pounding on my door. "Just what do you think you're doing?" she demanded. I blinked in confusion. "I'm not sure what you mean. I just planted some small palm trees in my own yard." "Well, it's unacceptable," Karen snapped. "Those trees are going to ruin my ocean view when they get bigger. You need to dig them up immediately." Now I was getting irritated. "With all due respect, Karen, you can't dictate what I do on my own property." "You just watch me," Karen hissed before storming away. I thought that was the end of it. Unfortunately, I underestimated Crazy Karen. A few days later, I was working in my garage when 2 police cars pulled up. 2 officers approached me warily. "Are you aware there's been a complaint filed against you?" one officer asked. I stared at them, dumbfounded. "A complaint? Against me? For what?" "Your neighbor said you are intentionally blocking her view in violation of city codes," the officer explained. It all became clear. Karen had called the cops on me. I quickly retrieved the land surveys and permits for my trees to show the officers. "As you can see, the trees are well within my property line and within height regulations," I explained. "My neighbor just doesn't like them." The officers examined the documents and agreed I'd done nothing wrong. "Sorry to bother you, sir," they said. "You're free to carry on." After the cops left, I noticed Karen glaring at me from her deck. Her scheme had failed, but something told me this wasn't over. Sure enough, the very next day the cops were at my door again. This time there were 3 cars. "Let me guess, my neighbor Karen called about the trees again?" I said dryly. "No, sir, this is more serious," an officer said grimly. "She reported you for destruction of property and is pressing charges." "That's ridiculous," I cried. "I haven't destroyed anything." "She claims you poisoned and killed a rare rose bush of hers that was on the property line." I simply could not believe this. There was no rose bush anywhere near the property line. Karen was completely fabricating stories now. I led the officers to the supposed crime scene to point this out. "Do you see a dead rose bush around here anywhere?" I asked, gesturing at the empty side yard. The cops scanned the area and agreed there was no bush, dead or alive. "Sir, we sincerely apologize for the repeated calls," the main officer said. "Unfortunately, each complaint needs to be checked out, but after today, we will take your neighbor's claims with a grain of salt." "I understand you're just doing your job," I replied. "It's Karen who's out of control." After the police left, Karen realized she'd been caught lying. "You win this round, but I'm not done with you yet," she yelled furiously from her deck. At that point, I'd had enough. If Karen wanted an all-out war over some palm trees, then so be it. I decided to fight back, but legally. My brother-in-law happened to be a real estate attorney, so I sought his advice. He recommended sending Karen an official cease and desist letter warning her to stop the false complaints or face legal action. That would scare her into backing off, he figured. I had the letter professionally printed and overnighted to Karen's address. A copy went to the police department too, for good measure. The legal letter definitely freaked Karen out. I noticed her peering out her windows nervously. She didn't approach me, though. The wild complaints also stopped completely in the following weeks. It seemed I had won this battle. To celebrate, I added a nice stone pathway winding through my new palm trees. I was testing my luck perhaps, but I refused to be intimidated into changing my own property. One evening I was strolling along my new path, admiring the palms in the moonlight. The air smelled of the sea. For a moment, I forgot all about Karen and just enjoyed the peaceful ambiance. Suddenly, a deafening crash jolted me from my reverie. Whipping around, I saw that my mailbox had been smashed to pieces by a car. Shocked, I ran over to survey the damage. The mailbox was totally destroyed. The post was snapped off and laying in the grass. My engraved address numbers were cracked and scattered around. As I stood gaping at the wreckage, a flashy sports car came screeching up. A furious Karen jumped out, screaming at me. "You think you're so clever with your legal threats and this ridiculous pathway? Now look at what you made me do!" I was speechless. Unstable Karen had run over my mailbox in a fit of rage over palm trees. "You're insane!" I shouted. "I'm reporting you for this destruction of my property. You're going to pay." "Go right ahead," Karen retorted. "I have more money than you. I can drag this out forever." She stormed back to her car and peeled out down the street. My head was spinning. Karen seemed fully unhinged now. Who knew what she might do next? I called the police and my lawyer and described the mailbox incident. They were just as stunned as me. "This woman clearly has some mental issues," the officer noted. "We can charge her with criminal damage, but it's only a misdemeanor with a fine as punishment." "I'd recommend an emergency restraining order," my lawyer suggested. "It should legally prohibit Karen from coming near you or your property. Any violation would mean jail time." It seemed an extreme measure, but Karen's escalating behavior didn't leave me much choice. I had the lawyer file the emergency order right away. A sheriff served Karen the next morning. Through my window, I could see her reading the order, her face purple with rage. I knew then I had made the right decision. This woman was dangerous. Of course, a legal order meant nothing to someone as unbalanced as Karen. A mere week later, I awoke to discover my palm trees chopped down and sawed apart. Karen stood on her deck, proudly wielding a chainsaw. "Try regrowing them now! I'll cut down every tree you plant!" she yelled manically. Immediately, I called 911 to report the clear violation of the restraining order. Within minutes, Karen's deck was swarming with police. As Karen was hauled away in handcuffs, something she said earlier suddenly made sense. "I have more money than you." She thought she could use wealth to avoid consequences for her harassment. Karen's lawyer tried every stall tactic, but the evidence was undeniable. Destroying my trees violated the restraining order. Finally, the judge sentenced Karen to 6 months in county jail for her repeated harassment, destruction of property, and violent behavior. I celebrated by planting coconut palms, knowing Karen couldn't touch them from her lonely jail cell. Maybe now I could have some peace and enjoy my little oceanfront cottage again. In the end, Karen's obsessive, entitled behavior landed her behind bars over some trivial palm trees that were never hers to begin with. She could have just accepted them gracefully and continued enjoying her expensive home and status, but she let jealousy and greed corrupt her into a criminal. This peaceful beach community is certainly better off without her around causing drama. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My family gathers at a rural cabin. I had agreed to give my younger sister a ride to the airport on Sunday since she was on a short break from college and had important classes and tests to return to after Thanksgiving. I had also agreed to lock up the cabin for my parents since they had to leave on Saturday to attend pressing work matters. During the post-dinner conversation on Thanksgiving, my sister decided to give me a hard time about the tough couple of months I had experienced. My long-term girlfriend and I had broken up, and the company I worked for had folded. This went beyond the usual sibling banter, with her saying something like, "Who would date or hire a worthless failure loser like you anyway, huh? Your girlfriend was probably involved with your boss and dumped you both when she realized you were both failures." Several family members called her out on her crude remarks, but she refused to apologize. I appeared to let it go. I had enough emergency funds, a few job prospects lined up. I was hired shortly after and even received a nice salary bump. And I was fine with being single. However, her intense hostility caught me off guard and was unwarranted. On Sunday morning, I waited for her in the kitchen with a bottle of Jack Daniels. "Hey, Heather," I greeted her as she entered the kitchen. "Want to apologize for your hurtful comments the other night?" She chuckled. "About your being a failure without a spine? Nope. Now, let's get going. I have a flight to catch." "Fair enough," I responded and poured myself a double, then downed it. "What on earth are you doing?" she yelled. "Asterisk, I have a plane to catch." "You certainly do," I responded cheerfully. I paused, repeated the pouring and downing routine. Well, damn, it seems I've had too much to drink to drive. I suppose we'll have to wait until you can act civil, won't we? She pulled out her phone and messed with it for a few seconds before I said, There aren't any cab companies or Ubers around here. I'm your only ride, so you can either apologize for being unpleasant or you can miss your flight. Screw you. I grinned and took another shot. In summary, I got thoroughly drunk. She missed her flight, ended up missing some tests, and her GPA took a nosedive. It was incredibly amusing. The next one is a petty revenge story. Where I live, the underground water level is very close to the ground, so our underground parking spaces usually have to be waterproof. As we are talking about 2,000 square meters of concrete, there are bound to be some cracks and leaks, and we will fix it in due time. Enter Karen. Her parking spot had a crack that was releasing a small amount of water, and every time she got out of the car, she had to step on a wet surface. Not a puddle, just wet. There's nothing wrong there. It's our obligation to fix it. However, this woman goes on and starts calling me and our team every hour, screaming, disrespecting my employees, calling them stupid, and saying she's going to sue if we don't fix it today. We all try to calmly explain that we should do that after the rainy season is over. But she just won't accept it. So we come by and do the repair on her parking spot yesterday, in the rainiest week of the year. Due to the repair, she has to park her car on the street instead of the garage for a week. I may or may not have been a little overly cautious about the time the concrete takes to set. The streets are literally flooded, with a water level of 2 to 3 centimeters, and now she has to get her shoes a little more wet to get home for a week. This gave me a little bit of peace. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A few weeks ago, I found myself parked next to a car that was, as far as I could tell, identical to mine. Same make, Subaru, model, Outback, color, muddy green, and probably the same year, although I'm not an expert. Close enough, probably. It's a popular car. I pass them all the time. My car has a largish parking lot ding on the driver's side rear door panel. No idea how it got there. Probably some kid opened his door a little too quickly, forcefully, and it smacked into my car. These things happen. No need to get worked up about it. I'd been meaning to get it fixed, and I'm a little sorry that I didn't do it because it would have saved the idiot a lot of grief. Self-inflicted grief, to be sure, but still. Enter the idiot. Bog-standard middle American dad. Nothing special about him. We're both exiting Walmart with full carts, and he's about 100th ahead of me. As we approach, I'm thinking it looks like he's heading in the same direction. I even plan on jokingly saying nice car in Subaru solidarity. But I will not get that opportunity. I should mention here that I've already clicked my clicker to unlock the car. It'll be important later. Kinda wish I hadn't, TBH. That would have spared the idiot some grief too. This is the point where the idiot notices the large ding on his car's door. And he takes offense at that. To be fair, that ding is pretty ugly. The paint is gone where the tip of something from whatever hit it was centered, and there's a scratch leading off to one side. I think it kinda looks like a spoon in the middle of a small, shallow cereal bowl. So anyway, he gets really mad, like screaming things like, son of a idiot, and it's a ducking brand new car, and stuff. I think he looked up at the windshield, hoping to find a note or something, but this all happened so fast that my brain might be making up details to fit into the blank spots. I've actually slowed down a bit by now because it's uncomfortable being around really pissed off people. And to be honest, I was super confused about what was going on. For a second, I actually forgot which car was whose. It didn't make sense for him to be hopping mad about my car having a dent. I think my brain was going, wow, 2 exactly same cars getting huge parking lot dings in them. What are the odds? But you know that weird twisting feeling where you reorient yourself from the confusion and snap back to reality? That happened. I realized that he had made the same mistake that I made, and so I did what anyone would naturally do. I called out, "Hey, it's okay, that's my car," which backfired spectacularly. The idiot must have thought that I meant, "That's my car's door that smacked into yours," which only made him madder. He started yelling things like, "What the duck?" and more of, "It's a ducking brand new car," and more of the same. I tried to explain, not exactly easy from a distance and definitely a lot harder when someone is raging at you, and that's when he opened the driver's side rear door on my car, that is the one with the large ding, and then he slammed it into his car. Hard. It made a dent. Took a little paint off the edge of my door too, but I didn't notice that until later. So at that point, I yelled, "Hey, stop that!" which only made him more upset because he responded with, "Oh, you don't like that? Shut the duck up," or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing here. So, I guess in a nutshell, that's my malicious compliance. I did exactly what he said, shut the duck up, and let him slam my car door into his car a couple more times. And I let him try to kick it too. There wasn't enough room between the two cars for a good Chuck Norris roundhouse, so he had to be satisfied with a weak sauce knee to the rear quarter panel. But kudos for trying, idiot. You gave it your best shot. I wish I were some kind of heroic Viking warrior who could come to the defense of his property. But my flabby-ass, wimpy dad bod isn't up to a fight in a Walmart parking lot. So I backed my cart full of ice cream and frozen tater tots right the duck off there and started booking it back to Walmart, intending to ask for help from a security guard. I sincerely regret that because I did not get to see the moment when the scales fell from the idiot's eyes and he realized that he had been beating the crap out of his own car. I can only imagine that it was one of the most epic epiphanies of his angry life. And to compound my disappointment, he exited the parking lot in the opposite direction, preventing me from seeing the extent of the damage he had done. I didn't get to applaud either. This whole episode took maybe 5 minutes, tops, probably less. But aside from a little lost paint on the edge of my door, that was probably going to have to be replaced anyway, I was fine. Him, not so much. The next one is an entitled people story. A few years ago, I worked a job that required me to travel a lot. From Monday night through Thursday night, I pretty much lived in a hotel room. I did this job for 10 years, because my destinations were nearly always in the same cities, with my meetings at nearly the same location. I stayed at the same motels. The company I worked for paid for the hotels and expenses. They also had no issue with me joining rewards programs with the various hotel chains I frequented. After a time, several of the hotels knew me by name. One hotel, in particular, had a room that they referred to as the Mr. Theologian's room. With another chain, I had more than achieved diamond status in their rewards program and had over 750,000 points. So, when I would call and reserve a room, they would automatically upgrade me to a presidential suite if it was available, or a master suite if the presidential suite was not available. So one Monday afternoon, I arrived at my motel destination with my reservation information handy in case I encountered a new person at the front desk. As I entered the lobby with my luggage, a couple was at the desk, and there seemed to be an issue. The person at the front desk, who was the manager, was trying to explain to this couple that the hotel was fully booked. The man was saying that he had called earlier that day to check on room availability for an event taking place in the city, and had been told that there were rooms still available. There was an event in the city that week, and all the hotels were full. I knew about the event in advance, and had made a reservation 2 months prior. Knowing that I would be there at the same time as the event, I planned ahead. The woman in the couple had become very upset before I arrived. She was shouting obscenities and making claims of racism. The man kept asking to speak with the manager who he was actually speaking to. The man was frustrated and upset, but he was also trying to stay composed and calm down his furious female companion. It was truly embarrassing to stand there and watch this unfold. After about 15 minutes or so, they reluctantly gave up and decided to leave. As they stormed past me, the man told me, "Give it up, man, there are no rooms here." I approached the front desk and the manager greeted me, saying that my room was ready. Well, the couple that was leaving overheard this, and I thought the woman had been loud the first time. The woman came rushing back to the front desk, demanding to know why I had been given a room while they had been turned away. Now I was the target of some of her anger. I tried to explain that I had a reservation, but it didn't seem to matter. The front desk manager and I were both subjected to a barrage of obscenities and accusations of various crimes. The woman suddenly turned towards me and attempted to kick me, although she only managed to kick my suitcase. Her male companion came over and tried to calm her down, apologizing for her behavior. However, she continued her tirade. This continued for 5, maybe 10 minutes before the police arrived. The manager had activated an alarm because she felt threatened. Due to a citywide event, the police arrived in pairs, and there were 2 of them. The police managed to somewhat calm the woman down and began taking statements. She kept insisting that I be arrested for stealing their hotel room. My statement was straightforward. I'm here on business. Here is a copy of my reservation made 2 months earlier, and no, I don't want to press charges for attempted assault. After the police gathered statements from everyone, they informed the couple that they had to leave or they would be arrested. The man appeared somewhat annoyed but agreed. The woman, on the other hand, exploded. I won't go into detail about everything she said here. Her male companion was now telling her to shut the heck up and just go, but she persisted. She wanted her hotel room that she felt entitled to, using her exact words. Unfortunately for her, it didn't end well. She slapped a police officer. What happened next occurred so swiftly that it was astonishing. The officer she slapped swiftly spun her around, placed her in handcuffs, and escorted her to the police car. This all transpired in about 45 seconds. Simultaneously, the other officer turned to her companion. He immediately raised his hands in the air and declared, "I'm not with her." The man continued apologizing for her behavior as he departed. The police finished their tasks and left. I could see the woman in the back of the police car crying and saying something to the officers as they drove away. The rest of that week passed rather uneventfully. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.